I'm the one running behind, huh? All right, let's call this meeting to order and stand with our pledge. Is the flag around the corner here? Can you see it? Is it there?
It usually is in here.
Is it yes? Or no?
No.
I see the Virginia flag.
We've had auditions going on the last couple of days, so I know things have been moved around.
I'll have a picture of the flag.
I can do that. Hey, hold on a second.
Salute the Virginia flag.
That's like the original flag.
All right, let's say our pledge.
Yeah.
Attention, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's pause for a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. Welcome. Welcome to our monthly meeting. We are here to accomplish the business of schools for the sake of our students. We do want to hear from our citizens. There is time for public comment prior to action items on the agenda. We also need to remember, I think we forgot our Zoom folks last meeting to see if they had any input. I didn't know we did 2 months ago. Did we ask them?
Yeah, we
Did? Okay, good. And so if you're on Zoom and you have a desire to share or ask, you also have opportunity. We ask the speakers identify themselves and their district. We also ask that your comments are limited to 3 minutes in order to provide equity to all speakers and to ensure our meeting is reasonable in its length. If you have more information that can be summarized in 3 minutes, please leave behind materials for the board's review. The moderator will ask you to conclude your remarks as time has elapsed. If you have questions during this session, you may ask for clarification from your school board member or a school administrator after the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda this evening?
So move.
A motion from Mr. Grove. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Bynum. Any comments? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no? It's ordered. Ms. Cassia?
Yeah.
Come. This is our last opportunity, I believe. Is that correct? And sad?
Very sad.
It's been an exciting ride, Cassia.
I've enjoyed it. Good evening, everybody. As you all know, the holiday season is underway, and Rappahannock has definitely done its part in that. So far, we had a NHS project led by Breland Stewart that combined with Rat Care. And they were able to do a drive and fill up an entire classroom filled with baby products and lots of toys. I had to help wrap lots of those, so I definitely know. And clothes and non-perishable foods and everything that's going to go up to West Virginia and help with some nursing homes and some children for Christmas. So that was huge and super amazing that happened. There's also a Leo Club project by Meredith. That's for Ava Janot's little sister Annie, who currently has cancer. And so she's already done cards from all of Annie's friends, and Annie was super duper excited about that to hear from all of them. And they're going to be doing more with that project later on the year. And then Luke Ellis has also been heading a food pantry project that's been amazing and doing service for everybody. And that's been going in during Thanksgiving and now doing one in Christmas where we're putting boxes together for the food pantry. And so there's been lots of volunteers for that. And then there's also been other millions of little service projects that have been happening around in our student community. So that's been really fantastic. And if you're interested in any more about that, Ava Janot is printing out an article with the newspaper, I believe, on some of the bigger ones. Then, a few weeks ago, we also had our Renaissance Day, which was like our No Zeros Club Day kind of thing. So you had to have all your work done, turned in for that semester, and it was to help motivate students to get all their stuff done. Because, when it's winter, you get lazy, and you're just like, yeah, but I don't want to. So that was really, really awesome. There was a rock wall, there was bouncy houses, and like the obstacle course kind of thing. And then there was Hungry Hippos, and that was really fun because it's like a waistband, and it pulls you back, and that was cool. And then gaming trailer and volleyball tournaments and lots of cotton candy and lots of cotton candy like everywhere. That kind of exploded, but it was fun. So that was a really, really good day, and I think it helped motivate students to get their work done. And at the end, students who had been working all day really hard were able to come and join us that weren't originally able to be there because they were still working on some work. So that was super nice and awesome for them. And then we also had our Winter Spirit Week, which had a lot of involvement because who doesn't like wearing their pajamas? I mean, I wear mine to school. So that had a lot of involvement, and that was fun. And then we had our winter, like, Christmas door competition holiday kind of thing. And so if you get a chance to walk through the hallways, you'll see them. There's one that's Polar Express. There's one that's a little mantle that has Miss Sanborn and Mr. Seward on it. That's nice. And so we had that. And then we've also had just a bunch of like little holiday things kind of happening around. Yesterday, the Hog team did cookies and cocoa for the seniors and juniors. Just, talk to them some and stuff, so that was really nice of them. And then today was a cool thing that I actually got to be part of, which was super awesome, but the econ class got to go down to the elementary school and participate in their My Future program, which helps the children earn money that they get at the end of their high school career. And so that was super duper fun, and I love reading to all the kids, and they're so adorable, and they're like, here, read to us, and we love stickers, and everywhere. And it was like, the kindergartners were a little bit quiet, but the first graders, they were hyper, and it was so much fun. And that was such a fun thing to be a part of. Other than that, we've also had our the winter formal that happened a little while ago, and I heard that was very good, and people enjoyed that. This first winter formal we've ever had, so that was nice. And I believe those are the main events that we've had so far since last time. And so that's been really, really amazing. And everybody's very excited for winter break.
Sure.
To get everything done. Everybody's working on their finals and everything. And then I just wanted to give a big thank you to everybody who supported me in doing this student rep position. It's been a ton of fun, and I've enjoyed it so much. And I hope my reports have helped you guys kind of have a better idea and perspective of what the students are feeling and what they see and how they're interacting with the different programs and everything that are in place. And I've really, really enjoyed it, and thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. Does anybody have anything you want to ask Cassia before she cuts out? This is our last opportunity to see Cassia in this forum this way.
I might still be here. I might sit in the
So I'm
back.
sure you'll be there.
Probably will want to keep coming.
Hey, if you have a second, can you come up the stairs?
Thank you, Cassia. Shower. Very careful. It's a liars.
It's a test. You haven't had enough tests in December. There's another one. We have I'm so grateful for you and how you relate information to us this year. It's been extraordinary, so helpful, and genuinely felt connected to the student body in a way that I haven't in a long time, and so I appreciate it. I don't know what this says. This probably says you're super or something like that. Yep. For your hard work and dedication as a student liaison on the school board during 2021. So very grateful. And you need to pose, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. Pose. Should we pose scandalously on that? Or just leave like this? No, it's okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. A lot of pressure. Superintendent would be so upset if I tripped over one of those wires. All right, Madam Clerk, can you review donations?
Yes,
for us?
Nancy Fitchett donated $20 to purchase hygiene items for the West Virginia Rap Care trip. Thorson Construction Company donated $200 to purchase hygiene item containers for the Rap Care trip. Kay Kohler donated $100 to the art department. And Oliver Putnam, Oliver, sorry, donated $150 to the art department. And that's all the donations.
All right, thank you very much. And we will approve donations during the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes from November the 9th?
So moved.
We have a motion from Ms. Bynum. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Meyer. Any comment? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no. It's ordered. Mr. Grove, have you had opportunity to review the bills?
I did, and everything looks to be in order. I did have a question about Title IV.
Okay.
Do you know where that stands? I'm assuming the money has not come in, but
Outstanding Title IV reimbursements?
it's a negative thing. So
That
I'm
just means
assuming
a
it hadn't
reimbursement
transferred
should come
in.
in. But we'll
Be
verify.
something to look at, that's all.
Yep. That's a federal program, so
That's
that's
right.
all reimbursement funds.
That's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everything else looks to be in order.
Thank you, Mr. Grove. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Rubin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Grove. All in favor, aye? Aye. Aye, opposed, no. So ordered. We're moving on to Dr. Grimsley. Your report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Item 4.1 on the report of the superintendent is actually Dr. Green, our interim health director for the Rappahannock-Rapidan Health District. And last time there was some talk about having him come to our meeting to just update the board on the status of COVID in our area and in our district, as well as now that we've had Omicron surface and what we know about that and the current realities that we're facing. So Dr. Green, I'm going to pull up your slides, and if you want to go ahead and start talking, I think you're on. Okay?
Okay, so are you driving then? I just need to say next. Is that the deal?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So if you start video, what happens? I can see some faces finally. Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, go ahead to the next slide, please. And for those that I haven't met, I'm Colin Green. I'm a family doctor and am the full-time health director of Lord Fairfax Health District across the mountains, and the acting health director of Rappahannock-Rapidan, which I've been for since the beginning of March and will be until the 1st of February. So here's the agenda, a little bit about the flu and a whole lot about COVID. Next, please. So the flu is back. We have not had much of the flu for a couple of years, and we basically did not have a flu season last winter. And the generally accepted and certainly logical explanation for that is everybody was wearing a mask and staying away from one another, so that the same techniques to reduce the spread of COVID essentially eliminated the spread of flu, and we had very, very few flu cases and no recognizable flu season. Well, people aren't wearing masks so much anymore. They're not distancing this year, and by golly, flu is back. In the last week, it went from just sporadic cases in the state to actually widespread cases in the state. So as of 4 December, flu is now widespread in Virginia. That's the first time that's happened since probably the spring of 2020. And what do? Well, first of all, number one, that the fact that flu went away when we were all masking and it's come back now that we've stopped is more proof, should anybody need it, that masking is effective for preventing the spread of respiratorily spread diseases. Second is, if you haven't gotten your flu shot, please do get it. This is independent of the COVID shot. This is another disease which certainly can make you sick as a dog for a number of days and make you miserable. And for particularly susceptible people, vulnerable elderly, and some very small children, people with chronic disease, it occasionally puts people in the hospital and can be fatal. Flu probably kills between 20 and 60 people here in a district the size of Rapp, probably not quite that many, maybe 20 to 40 in any given year. And again, they're usually very, very vulnerable people. So if you haven't gotten your flu shot, please do get it, just so you don't get sick, if nothing else, or reduce your risk of getting sick. And the way to prevent spreading the flu is pretty much the same as preventing the spread of COVID. Obviously, if you're sick, stay home. I hope that's a habit that's in people's minds to stay. Cover coughs and sneezes. Your mother probably told you to do that. It really does apply. And wash your hands frequently, because the flu and common cold viruses really do spread very quickly by contact, even though that wasn't a major driver of the COVID epidemic. Next slide, please. So you've probably heard about the Omicron variant, and Omicron is letter number 15, I guess, in the Greek alphabet. They skipped the letter nu because we didn't want a who's on first situation talking about the new variant. And they skipped the letter Xi, which is spelled the same way as the leader of the People's Republic of China. And WHO didn't want to get into that conundrum either. So we're talking about Omicron. It's been identified in 77 countries around the world and 30 states and the District of Columbia. We've seen 2 cases as of this afternoon in Virginia. There will be lots more. Those are just the 2 that we found. We know some things about Omicron, but we don't know enough to really make predictions. The Omicron variant has a large number of surface mutations, and a bunch of them are on those spike proteins that the antibodies attack. But that may or may not result in clinical effects, and the jury's still out on that. It popped up first in South Africa. It appears to be extremely contagious. The number of cases has shot up in South Africa. It is now, I believe, the predominant variant in South Africa has displaced Delta, which implies that it's more contagious than Delta. We'll see if that holds. I think it's about 20% of the new cases in the United Kingdom. So we're going to see Omicron here. There has been a rise in hospitalizations in South Africa, but thus far, very, very few deaths have been reported from Omicron. There was 1 in the UK. That's the only one I'm aware of right now. So time will tell. The early stories from South Africa were that this is a very contagious variant, but maybe not a severe one. We'd really like it very much if that remained the case, but we'll see. Right now, Delta is still the main enemy. It's as bad as ever, and I'll show you some data to show you just how bad it is. And obviously, getting vaccinated saves lives, and it starts with yours. And I've got some graphic proof of that if you haven't seen it from other sources. So, again, what does Omicron mean? What will it do? The honest answer is we don't yet know yet, so please stand by. Next. So, a few stats next. This is the day-by-day case count. Orange line is the 7-day moving average. And you can see the peak back in the early middle of September was the peak of the Delta variant outbreak. That kind of settled down into mid to late October. And then the weather got cold and we started staying inside and hanging around with each other, and it cycled on back up. Not quite to where it was in September, but it seems to be heading that way. So this Delta variant is with us. It's probably going to stick with us through the winter anyway. Next, please. This is just Rappahannock County. Again, smaller population, relatively small number of cases. A little bit harder to get a trend off of this, but there really hasn't been a whole lot of a change in the case count in Rappahannock County. It dropped down a little at the end of October, and it's bumped back up again and maintained a relatively level state through November and December. Again, 2 to 4 cases per day, essentially, or 1 to 4 cases, what we're seeing. Next, please. This is back to the entire health district, the Rappahannock-Rapidan Health District. And again, for anybody that doesn't know, in addition to Rappahannock County, that's Fauquier, Culpeper, Orange, and Madison. And these are the number of deaths identified by the actual date of death over the last 180 days in the district. And you can see there were none through much of the month of June and well into July. And that's when we all thought maybe we were done with COVID until Delta came along and brought it back. And you can see there were a few deaths from COVID here and there. And then along came Delta in force, and unfortunately now we've had a day or two into the double figures, and the bars are lower toward the right, but that's a time period when we don't have all the cases reported yet. So we unfortunately expect those bars to grow higher. And time will tell as to whether the death count will continue at that level or or fluctuate. Next, please. And to put it all in perspective, this is the same graph, Rappahannock Rapidan Health District, number of deaths by date of death, but it's for the entire pandemic. And instead of a day at a time, it's a week at a time. But you can see we had a number of cases in April and May of 2020, which we thought was a lot at the time. Then we had a whole bunch. We had a similar number later on in the summer, and then we had a really big peak in the winter, and certainly that was quite severe. But if you look at the Delta peak, it actually rivals the one from last winter. And again, time will tell whether that peak settles down or whether it continues on for a while. But the bottom line is that Delta is a bad actor, and COVID is still very, very active in this district, all over the state, and honestly, all over the Northern Hemisphere. Next, please. Okay, so this is the big take home from this, and I'll give you the evidence in a moment. The vaccine prevents death. Anybody that tells you otherwise really doesn't understand the facts, and either that or there are a few people, I suppose, that have other reasons for saying the things they do, but the evidence is just overwhelming that this vaccine prevents people from dying. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show it to you. So this is data I've presented in other forums and actually shared with the media too. This comes from the VDH website. And what I've done is looked at the number of deaths from COVID that have been recorded in the last 3 months. And these numbers are from last week. So if you double checked it again this week, they might be slightly different, but not significantly. So number of COVID deaths in the last 3 months by county, and that's the left-hand column. And I have all the counties in both of the health districts that I'm covering, plus Loudoun County as a baseline. And if you look at the second column, I've just taken the first column, divided it by the population of the county, and then multiplied by 10,000. And that gives you a rate of deaths per 10,000. So that eliminates the fact that Loudoun County has, probably more people than all those other counties combined, or about the same. And it gives you a real rate of death in each county, each municipality. And then if you look at the right-hand column, that is the percent of the population age 5 and older that has had no shots whatsoever. That is the unvaccinated portion of the population. So if you look on the VDH website and you look at the data for at least one shot for ages 5 and over, it'll be 100 minus that number. So it ranges from Loudoun County, which has only 18% of that population that has not had a single shot, all the way up to Page County at the bottom, where it's almost half the population that's not had a single shot. And then if you look at the death rate, it goes from 0.5 in Loudoun, and it relatively steadily increases as the unvaccinated percentage of the population increases, all the way up to Page, which is more than 20 times Loudoun's rate. So there are a few outliers. Rappahannock County is actually one of them. It's a little bit below what you'd expect for its percentage rate, but it's a small population and only a very small sample. Same thing with Clark County, a small population, a little bit larger sample than perhaps what you might have expected. But if you look at the larger counties, with the exception of Shenandoah, which has just for some reason had a worse time of it than they should have, all the counties are in line with their unvaccinated percent. And this is really one of the most telling sets of data I've ever come across to show you that the more unvaccinated people there are in your county, the more people there are that are going to die from COVID. So I hope there's no doubt that vaccination saves lives after looking at these numbers. Next, please. Okay, higher percentage of unvaccinated people means more deaths from COVID, period. And that also means, unfortunately, people are dying who don't have to, just because they refuse to get the vaccine. And I've heard many sad tales along the way. Some of them are relatives of my coworkers. Next, please. Again, plenty of places to get the vaccine. You probably know about these. Next, please. This is another interesting point of view that's really very troubling if you think about it, but we all do the best for our families. We do the best for our children. We even buy life insurance to protect them if something happens to us. And yet a lot of us won't get a couple of shots to ensure that we'll still be around when the pandemic is done. Again, logically, that does not follow. And it's very troubling that that's an issue right now. Next, please. Okay, this is what probably the board cares about the most, because you've got a new semester coming up, and probably, unfortunately, the new semester starts on January 3rd, and the new administration doesn't start till January 15th, and it really leaves a whole lot of things up in the air that have to be dealt with, and try to predict what's going to happen. So let's dive into them. Next, please. So I'm going to talk about local factors, state factors, and then kind of future predictive factors. Local factors right now, the risk of spread of COVID is really quite high. It's as high as it's been since last winter. Very high level of community transmission. And then we've got this new variant coming along, the Omicron. We really don't absolutely understand what it's going to do when it gets here and comes here in force. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks to some degree, but it's going to take longer than that in the long term. So this is probably not the time to be lightening up on restrictions because the risk level is high. Rappahannock County, fortunately, has a substantial vaccination rate. So the no-shot portion of the population is about 1/3, which is a lot better than many of its neighbors. But if you look at the high school age kids, it's almost half that have had no shots at all. The middle schoolers, it's just over half, and the elementary school, it's 85%. So there's a whole lot of unvaccinated individuals. And the people that are immune from natural immunity, maybe 10 or 12% added, but it's not enough to make up the difference. Fortunately, the elderly, almost 90% have had at least one shot, and 3/4 are fully vaccinated. So Rappahannock County's most vulnerable do have a reasonable level of protection. It's still not ideal, but a whole lot better than, again, many of the neighbors. So high risk for spread, pretty good vaccination rates relative to some counties, but still a lot of vulnerable people, a lot of susceptible people in the population, and particularly the student population. Next, please. So state and federal factors, the big question is, of course, the new administration starts on the 15th of January. It's about 2 weeks after the semester starts. Education was a major campaign issue. It's one of the issues that the governor-elect won on. It was probably less about COVID and more about other things, particularly parental involvement. But COVID will certainly come into it. Probably most, and now I'm doing something I hate doing right now. I am speculating a little bit, but I think these are probably more educated guesses rather than just speculation. I have a feeling most COVID-related mandates will go poof on the 15th. And VDH, the Virginia Department of Health, will return to an advisory role. We will no longer be anything like the mask police, and frankly, that's a role I wish we'd never had to start with. An advisory role is really what is appropriate for us in a situation like this. And then Republicans like to decentralize power and decisions. I doubt you're going to see the Department of Education telling you line by line exactly what to do. I think the school districts are going to have some freedom. And again, I don't know that for sure. Just 40, 50 years of watching national politics, I have a feeling that's the way things are going to go. The federal school bus mandate will not change. So that the mandate that requires mask wearing on school buses comes from the Department of Transportation and the federal government. So Governor-elect, soon to be Governor Youngkin, cannot change that. On the other hand, I'm not sure how the feds are proposing to enforce that. I doubt they're going to send the FBI down to check out our school buses. I think probably the Department of Justice has better things to do. Who knows? But that mandate will still officially stay in force. And then the next question is CDC guidance. The CDC up to this time has generally chosen the most risk-averse recommendations for COVID, and I don't know that that's likely to change. But what may change is the policy of the Virginia Department of Health to strictly adhere to what the CDC says. I suspect you'll see some loosening of that, which may make some things a little bit easier on the school districts. So the good news is you'll probably have some more flexibility. The bad news is you're going to have the responsibility too. Next, please. Excuse me. So what factors are going to change the future? Obviously, community transmission rates, as long as they remain high, there's the risk for spread. And again, probably not the time right now to be backing off on prevention techniques. Lower rates in the future obviously will translate into less of a need for restrictions. We'd all love it if we went back to where we were in June, where we can think about tossing the masks in the trash and going back to a relatively normal life. But the problem is we don't know when that's going to happen. And sooner or later it will eventually, but will that be 6 months or longer from now? I don't know. Immunity rates are a big deal. Obviously, the quickest, easiest, and safest way to get immunity is to get vaccinated. Will the acceptance of vaccination change any? Will there be some improvement in the vaccination rates, particularly among the school age? Don't know. There will be gradually increasing post-infectious immunity, especially if Omicron shows up and it's extremely contagious. It's going to spread around. Delta is already spreading. So sooner or later, most unvaccinated people are going to catch some form of this virus. We don't have a really good measurement right now for measuring post-infectious or so-called natural immunity. The CDC has not approved one particular measure. I frankly wish they would pick one and do that, but they have not to date. And then finally, if we see signs of achieving herd immunity, at that point, that'll be a time when really we can start looking at the end game of this pandemic. But we're not there yet. What's a sign of herd immunity? Well, you see a steady fall in the case rate, hospitalization rate, and death rate, and it does not rebound because you have enough immune people around that there aren't enough people left to spread it. So some places like Loudoun County with their numbers are actually probably getting fairly close to that state right now. Rappahannock County is not there yet, nor are any of the other municipalities in either of my districts. Then there's the effect of the natural course of disease. Again, eventually most people who are unvaccinated are going to get sick. That is not desirable because this virus has a lot of unpleasant side effects, including prolonged loss of taste and smell, but things like myocarditis, which happens a lot more frequently with infection than it does with vaccination, and a number of maybe unknown effects of COVID on the body. We're still learning what the virus does and where it infects. Clearly, it does have some effect on the heart muscle, so that's all a little disturbing. And then the Pollyanna outlook on Omicron, which we don't really love, is that we're extremely contagious but cause very mild disease and yet made everybody immune. If that happened, that could be the end of the pandemic. But that would be a perfect or reverse perfect storm of ideal situations. That's probably not going to happen. But a nonetheless less virulent, less severe, but more contagious variant nonetheless may slow down the adverse effects considerably, which would still be a good thing. We'll see. We don't know whether Omicron is going to stick with that less severe reputation or whether it's going to change. And then we have new treatments on the horizon. There are actually, in addition to the monoclonal antibodies you've probably heard of, there are a couple of medications. One of the ones from Pfizer, which has shown some very effective prevention of severe disease if it's given to people who are recently infected with COVID-19. Those medicines may mitigate a lot of the severe adverse effects. So lots of things going on, and unfortunately the time frame is not clear. Don't know what's going to happen with transmission rates because they're so dependent on what Omicron's going to do, what Delta's going to do, how many people get vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera. The antiviral medicine from Pfizer, I would think probably will show up available in the next 2 or 3 weeks. It has to go through the FDA and the CDC process. But none of this together is going to change the picture significantly before the onset of the second semester of this year. Next, please. So here are the things that the board's going to need to consider. And the first one is what to do with masks. And of course, the kids on the buses are still required to wear them. But do you try and hold on to universal masking? Do you ask only the unvaccinated to mask? Do you make masking voluntary? Or do you just say forget about it, which I didn't put up there because I don't think that's likely to happen right now, but that is a potential option. The second, what do we do with quarantine? That's probably one of the least popular aspects of our present program. But the CDC and the Central Office of the Department of Health has held to insisting on quarantining and contact tracing for the time being. So do we continue that? Do we do away with quarantine and just send sick kids home and keep sick kids home? And then if we are doing contact tracing and we're not universally masking, our 3-foot exposure distance goes up to 6 feet. So those are all considerations. And then I don't think you'll see any more vaccine mandates. Certainly we should continue to encourage and facilitate vaccination, and the district can work with the schools to set up clinics like we did in November and the first part of December. Be happy to collaborate with you to facilitate vaccination to the extent that it'll help. And then will you have requirements for, athletics, for example, or musical productions? Those are things to think about, which certainly the school district would be within its right to require. And back one again, please. If you want me to ask an opinion right now, I would love to see universal masking and maybe a lightening of the quarantine requirement. However, I can offer that as an opinion. I can't endorse that as something that VDH approves right now because the central office still says we need to follow the CDC. So go ahead, next, please. Yeah, if only we could hear them coming like this. A little internet humor there for you, but I'm happy to answer questions or engage in any discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green. At this time, I'll open it up to board members, but I will say it's been a pleasure working with you, and we're going to miss you in Rap. Dr. Green's done a great job collaborating with the superintendents across the region and really answering our questions and advocating for our issues too that we see in the school, the adverse effects of some of the restrictions that we have to deal with on academic, social, emotional learning, economic stability, all of those pieces he really has been an advocate for at the central office. So we really appreciate that and hearing through different lenses. So board members have questions?
You have a question for Dr. Green?
Dr. Green?
Yes, I do, actually. Dr. Green, and thank you once again. We have created a matrix that we've been using and the superintendent's been using to determine where we stand as far as masks and distancing and quarantines and so forth and so on. And I'm wondering if we should not expand that matrix a little bit to include, to be the Rappahannock, Rapidan Health District, as opposed to just Rappahannock County as a district. Any comments on that?
Depends what you're measuring in the matrix. Is that where you're measuring community spread?
So Dr. Green, before, right now, all we can use is based on the CDC guidance. So it's really based solely on this community transmission rates. Prior to that, we did use a local metric that measured in-school transmission, vaccination rates, hospitalizations as secondary indicators. It was the school pandemic metric that was out prior to that. So what Mr. Grove is asking is if we were to go back to some sort of metric to measure escalation, de-escalation of restrictions, would it be better to expand it from just Rappahannock County to regionally, the Rappahannock Rapidan Health District, to measure metrics against that?
So
Right.
I'd probably like to see the matrix you're talking about first. I mean, what you're describing, actually, I kind of like the sound of better than what the CDC does, because theirs is just a arbitrary level of spread in the community, which honestly, if we followed it, we'd have had to shut all the schools last year when we didn't. So I'd be interested in looking at that matrix and maybe answering that question a little better.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions?
I just wanted to, thank you for coming, first of all. I just wanted to clarify that our goal as a board is to keep as many kids and staff healthy in school as we can. Like that's, I think we all agree on that.
Indeed.
And so knowing that, as you were saying, we're seeing flu spread more, probably indicating that people are not masking in public, which I don't think people are. It seems like keeping school open is really tied to keeping the mask mandate, knowing that we won't have a vaccine mandate coming from the state until such time as we don't have high community spread. Is that accurate?
I wouldn't say that keeping the school open is tied to the mask mandate, because we don't really know what's going to happen if we unmask at this
Thinking
point.
about the trajectory of spread that you just outlined,
Yeah.
if this winter spikes higher than last winter, as it seems to be going, according to the data that you just showed us.
There are a lot of other factors. So again, there are a lot of susceptible people in the county, but most of them are young.
Right,
Most
and
of
go
them
to
are
school.
not likely to have any severe outcomes, at least not hospitalization and death. So it's going to have to be a balance. I don't think anybody would really be interested in closing the schools again. I think that was where that was done. It was disastrous. So I would really argue strongly against that as even an option on the table at this point, unless something really horrible happens. But there's just too many unknowns. I mean, it may be that we throw the masks away and there are enough vaccinated students, and the ones that do get sick don't get severe disease, and it's not a disaster. I mean, that is a possible. It's risky because it may result in significant spread outside the school. But I think to expect that things are going to go on as they have been is not realistic. The new administration coming in is not going to support any kind of mandate from a state level. I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling there will be new leadership in the health department as well. And that situation just won't be sustained. So we're going to have to adapt.
But the best way to adapt might be to promote have more vaccination clinics and keep on promoting that the best? Is that?
Yeah, we could certainly work that out. And again, the school district, if you want to maintain your mask mandate, I think that's going to be something you can do as a district. But you'll also have to figure out how to enforce it.
We can do that. Shannon's good at that.
Dr. Green.
Or at least encourage it. I mean, it may never be 100%.
Dr. Green.
Most of the kids in school are pretty good kids, and they're going to do what they think they're supposed to do.
Dr. Green, my question, so you had mentioned in your second to last slide the quarantine and the sick child isolation only idea. The current quarantining of well children, it's causing a lot of stress in our families and in our school. And so I guess what I'm thinking about is the timing of this and how soon VDH is going to provide some updates that allow sick child only scenarios to be worked out, just like they were when any child was sick prior to COVID. How far out do you think that is?
I think it certainly could be done after the 15th of January. Will it be available sooner? That I don't know. The leadership has held pretty firmly to sticking with the CDC thus far. I will tell you that there are some of us asking questions, and I'm going to pose the question again as kind of a transition to the newer situation, the new administration. If we can look at possibly masking and backing off on quarantine. I know that's probably the single most troublesome requirement, just because it takes so many people out of school who are essentially well. One other statistic that would be interesting, if you have it available, is to know how many of your students and staff that are quarantined end up getting sick. In other districts where we do have that data, it's between like 1% and 3%.
Right.
And if it really is that low, you can probably make a cogent argument for not carrying on quarantine. So that number would be something useful to have.
Yeah, and I think we are collecting that kind of information. Also, I would just say it's when I say it's stressing families out, it's also now parents that have to take off from work to stay home and take care of a well child. So it's completely a stressor on the community at a time when what I see is that the school districts have a heavy weight of enforcement of restrictions, but then I'll go out to dinner or I'll go, anywhere I'm going out in the community doesn't have the same types of restrictions. So anyway, it's causing, I appreciate that you're advocating because it's causing a lot of stress in our families. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. And I was hoping to hear a timeline that would be January, some type of update that would get us, loosen the reins a bit on that. So, is there any other questions?
I'm here till the 1st of February, so I'll stick with you through the change of administration.
Oh,
Right.
okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. And we do thank you for coming. You did not have to say yes, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming and speaking to us. Yes.
Well, I'm actually grateful I can do this from my dining room table and not have to drive all the way down to Washington and back. So this is a win-win.
There are some benefits.
So I wasn't sure if there was another board member that might have another question. Is there anything else?
No.
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Green. We'll be in touch.
All right.
Sure.
Everybody have a great evening. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very, very helpful.
Very thorough, yeah.
I'm glad, I don't know who asked to have, it was
Yeah,
a really good
yeah,
idea to have
yeah,
him speak, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Green's been, like I said, very, very helpful. He meets with the superintendent's group, and there's never a question we can ask that he won't say, let me find out more about that. Do you have data to support that? Wow, let's look at that. I really appreciate that from, because a lot of public health officials really look through their public health lens, as they should. That's their lens, but superintendents are looking at the academic lens too, and we have a lot of concerns about some of the factors that we're measuring and seeing and how we're going to overcome that in a reasonable amount of time if restrictions continue for too long. So that's what we just have to define. So what we're pushing the health officials to do is give us some kind of an off-ramp, what parameters are acceptable, but it sounds very much like the state administration is going to put that on the district and say, well, what's right for Rappahannock, what's right for Loudoun, what's right for Virginia Beach. So it's going to be very much a community conversation to figure out what we feel is an acceptable assumption of risk with the factors that we have and our current realities. So that's what we're going to have to figure out.
But one thing that we put in place was this data-driven model, which to me has worked for us very well from the beginning. And, with the ability to escalate and de-escalate based on data. So I think we still are in a good spot.
We are, and the escalation, de-escalation thing, the problematic thing, and here's my honest opinion, is it's going to be difficult to loosen any restrictions until the quarantines go away. The reason being is that once, let's say we do away with masks, the radius goes from the 3 foot to 6 foot, we still have to quarantine, and if Omicron is as contagious as Delta was at the beginning, I'm going to be putting out a lot of kids and a lot of staff members if it evades immunity. So regardless of what we believe about transmission based on masking, math and distance,
Yeah.
just sheer numbers of, so that's what I worry about. If quarantines go away, we'll have a lot more flexibility to do some things, but that restriction has hurt us quite a lot.
When you say quarantines go away, I'm strictly talking about the quarantining of well children.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And
Exactly.
quarantining of sick children is what we used to do before COVID.
Yeah,
If your kid's not well, they stay home.
right.
Until they've been fever-free or whatever free
Exactly, and
for
that's
some
the
number of
model,
hours.
exactly.
And we just go back to that, right?
Right.
Right, so that's what you're saying when you're
That's
saying
what I'm
the
saying.
quarantines
So
go away.
until they do away with that restriction, which we do have to follow, and it's codified, and we have to trace and make sure anyone that could possibly be exposed, masked, unmasked, or whatever, has to stay, it's just numbers and distance. It will put a lot of people out if we have that
Oh, right.
come through, especially in the winter when everyone's close and things. So, I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of unknown right now, and when everybody, like we do, we watch the data. We have people that are, we have a winter break, everyone's gonna be in, we have holiday gatherings and all those things, so I'd really like to see what happens when we get back and just watch numbers and see how we're doing. But ultimately, flu and respiratory illnesses are with us through February generally. So, I mean, it would be prudent to probably stick to our guns right now through February, look at numbers, see what the administration does, what new guidance we get. There's going to be a lot to unpack. And jumping out with something before we know what any of that is probably would not be very
Not prudent.
right. So that's where the administration stands anyway on that.
Thanks.
Okay. Budget update, moving on. I should have put wellness check right after that. That would have flowed a little better. I apologize. I don't have much on the budget yet, other than the governor's budget will be released on Thursday, is what they project. The governor right now is putting in a 10% increase over 2 years for SOQ positions, which sounds wonderful, but our LCI gets in the way of that. So we're probably only going to get about 17% of the funding we need to actually fund that kind of an increase.
It's another unfunded mandate.
For us. I'm hopeful that there'll be more compensation supplements and other packages in there that we can access, and the governor-elect appears to want to continue with that, or at least a big push to get close to that amount for national average. So it's a bipartisan issue. Getting teacher raises up to over national average has been at the forefront of education policy. So more to see about how that goes. The process takes quite some time. I've met with teachers the last several weeks to get their perspective, staff and teachers and administrators. I always like to hear from them before we even start building anything. They're the ones on the ground, and they're the ones tackling the big issues. So they gave us some awesome ideas and put some things on our radar that we weren't even, aware of. So very, very helpful, but it's going to be kind of a challenging budget process with what we have to find. Any questions about that?
Are we going to have an opportunity to kind of give you our thoughts as far as budget
Priorities.
priorities and so forth?
Yep, that'll be our January work session on our budget calendar where we meet together, and then I get from you all what your priorities are. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Okay, moving to our well check. All of that was pretty scary, but I have an optimistic picture coming, so yay. So this is where we were on our dashboard in October. We had quite a few quarantines, jumped up there, looked better in November. And then after Thanksgiving and some of the events we were having, I got really worried about the possibility of a spike afterwards. But here we are currently, and we're holding steady at really low rates. So I'm really impressed with that. Our staff rate of vaccination is very high. Students, teenagers, surprisingly higher than I thought from what we've been able to gather. 5 and over. We didn't have too many come to our first vaccination clinic, but we have already had our second clinic for the 5 to 11. And I believe they said about 25 children were vaccinated, so. Yeah, but as a community, Dr. Green's slides kind of showed where we were with that. So maybe we are reaching a higher level of immunity than we thought, based on the numbers we're seeing, at least in the school population. So that's our graph overall since we started school. So holding steady since that little bit of a spike in quarantines, but our cases have been pretty steadily low since mid-October. And then Dr. Green showed some of this stuff already. The state is seeing an uptick now. Our locality's been pretty stable, like he shared. But all of our area still remains in the high community transmission based on that per 100,000 population rate. For Rappahannock, it would take us, I think, less than 4 cases a week for a period of several weeks to even get out of substantial. So it's going to take quite a lot of decrease in that. How are the other schools doing? These are active cases in schools based on their data dashboards. A lot don't really report quarantines. So Fauquier's pretty high, Culpeper, Page, our neighbors are up there, so we just have to be aware of that too.
But just as Dr. Green's slide about the percentages, I mean, we're much smaller than all of these districts that are on this chart, so.
Yeah, so relatively speaking,
Yeah,
percentages,
we're not-
right.
We're not doing that much better than any of them, percentage-wise.
Is the reason it's no data is just because they don't keep it, or because they won't give it to you?
It's just not reported on their dashboard.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe most of them do record that data. In our survey that we sent out for quarantines, we did have quite a few responses, so it makes me think that some of their tracing teams are collecting it. Whether or not they report it out is a local decision. That's all I have. So it's a good outlook heading out into winter break. Let's hope our numbers stay steady. We've been having a lot of events and fun activities, and our numbers are still stable. So we're very happy about that. Our sports programs are going strong.
Yeah, I think a lot of our success has to do with consistency.
Mm-hmm.
We've stayed consistent, and you've stayed consistent, and the staff has stayed consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's proof in the pudding, I think, from that perspective.
Right.
Yeah, it was really, I just wanted to say, she mentioned the winter formal. It's really neat to see the tent out there. It looks so festive from a distance. But I love that creative touch of having a dance where you can feel like you're within the protocol and having success and having fun. It's neat to see.
And that was thanks to the sheriff's department, who saw what we did at homecoming and really upscaled it for the winter.
Yeah.
That was the biggest tent I think I've ever seen.
The lights and all.
It was huge. And the ventilation was good. I was at the dance for a few hours and everything. The kids were having such a great time, and there were so many outdoor spaces, and they had an awesome time, and we didn't see any spread from that. So really excited about that.
That's good.
Are we going to buy that tent?
The sheriff's office, my budget won't afford it with this.
Yeah.
I don't think the sheriff's office is going to buy it.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much. Any other questions? Let's move on to the reports of our headwaters representative, Ms. Bond.
Okay. Well, you probably saw the Headwaters release their annual report just this past month. It's really impressive. It's been a busy year for them. Yeah, it's beautiful. I have it in my, it's well done, and they've accomplished a lot in this year, this really challenging year. They've really ramped up. You should read it cover to cover. Headwaters has this year awarded $5,000 in High School Plus scholarships, that new workforce training and dual enrollment fees for students at Rappahannock. That's been a successful program. There have been, to date, educational enrichment grants for teachers totaling $7,100 this year so far. And the after school, the session 2 will wrap up this week, And then session 3 starts on January 11th, and it's free for everybody in the elementary school, and transportation will continue to be offered for free as well. And kids can enroll on the Headwaters website. And then the scholarship applications will be up on the website this coming Thursday. So that's exciting. Headwaters has, $100,000 in scholarships available to give to students who are pursuing 4-year, 2-year, or trade school, any kind of post-high school education. And another new program, Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, is now available for anybody in Rappahannock County 0 to 5 years old. And you can get good free books sent to the child's home. And there's a website, imaginationlibrary.com, that you can sign anybody up for it. Yeah, it's exciting to have, just having books in the home is going to have a big impact it'll help us in the end. So it's great. And thanks. Brittany, you can add anything else you need to. There we go.
We're excited.
Yeah, keep it going.
This is the flyer that Rachel was talking about. There's a stack of them on the table right outside this door, if you want to grab one and even hand it to a friend, just so they can see and understand Headwaters better. It's very well done.
Yeah, I'll mention that Headwaters is doing their end-of-year fundraising push, and so anybody who's looking for something to give to, it's a good organization, I'd say. Yeah.
Thank you. MPGS?
No, we didn't meet, so everything's moving smoothly.
Right, the next thing on the agenda, the statements of economic interest. I guess that's that packet that we all see.
Yes.
And it's due after January 1st.
February 1st.
Is it before February 1st?
Yes.
Right?
Just do.
Yeah, but I guess we can't officially do them until after January 1st,
Right.
officially.
Right.
Right. So don't work on it and turn it in on December or whatever, because then it will have to be done again, right? So before February 1st, after January 1st, right? If there's anybody that had gone to the VSBA conference in Williamsburg that wanted to share anything tonight, anybody? So Ms. Meyer and Mr. Grove and I were there, and our superintendent, the clerk, and our assistant clerk were at a different conference across the road, but they were there. Do you guys have anything you want to share?
Not really. The issues that I went to were the legal happenings in Arlington and Fairfax primarily. So I think just keep them up there where they belong.
Anything? We did find out while we were there, we were expecting that the delegate assembly was there, and we kept looking through our agenda to find it, and found out that it was not there. It was only
virtual 2 days before.
and we missed it. So that was a surprise. I had 2 takeaways that I wanted to share. One, there was this keynote speaker who was just a fascinating young man, and he used to be the lead guitarist for Hanson, right? Does anybody remember Hanson? I don't. Anyway, Hanson. And he was there because in his life, he had to pivot, right? Because if you remember, Hanson was a big deal. And then, who's Hanson, right? And so he's talking about how he pivoted in his life. And then he said this to us. He said that, and I hope I get this correct, that he had read recently in the Harvard Medical Journal, I think was what he had quoted, that the first person in our era to live to be 150, 150, has already been born. He said, given that, how are we supposed to educate, or how do we best educate the student body that we now have in our care? And the idea was that we need to be able to teach them how to pivot. We need to teach them how to do research and learn and adapt and reapply themselves because the problem set and the working environment is going to be changing at the same time. And of course, if you live to be 150, retirement is now whatever, 120. And so multiple careers would be experienced by an individual. How do you train somebody for that? So anyway, it was a fascinating talk and a good time to step back and think about, you know, how it is we're approaching K-12. The second thing so the rest of my day was pretty much a yawner except for lunch, but I went to something at the very end of the day, which was a presentation with the Coalition of Small and Rural Schools, COSARS, right? And one of the reasons this was special to me is I just wrapped up the SIFT Team 1 LCI study write-up, which is extensive, and hopefully you'll get to see it in January. But what I saw in there was a lot of people with the very same types of problems that we have, where we are experiencing, you know, the same challenges as every other school district, but the funding from the state mandates on education are just not there. So that they have this in common, and so commiserating is not what they did, but they are more of a strategic body. And you need to know that that group funds a lobbyist who hangs out in Richmond and has her thumb on the pulse of a lot of things. And this lobbyist spoke to us for like 2 minutes. But the thing I find fascinating most about this lobbyist is after our superintendent made her presentation, the lobbyist wanted to talk to our superintendent, right? Because Shannon has her thumb on the pulse of what's happening for small and rural schools as well, and so she was contributing in that forum. It was a fascinating thing to be a part of. By the way, do you know that we got reevaluated and now our LCI is no longer 0.798. It's now 0.8. We have maxed out. Hooray, we're the max.
Point
And
8.9, right?
so,
I don't think you can get to 9.
no, 8 is it. You cannot
0.89.
you cannot get above 0.8, and we are there. Now, the bad news is, obviously, that means that money that we would have gotten last year, we're not going to get this year. And you might say, well, it's not going to be much, Wes. Well, guess what, right? Like Ailey Johnson used to say, pennies make dollars, and dollars make hundreds, and it all adds up really quick. So anyway, I did learn a lot at the very beginning of the day and at the very end of the day, and I had a great lunch. These seminars, they're interesting, but you know, I wonder sometimes about the value that we get for a full day. You know, you leave the house at 5 a.m., you get home at 8, and it's exhausting. And when I was a brand new board member and everything was new, this was exciting, and that was exciting, and this was exciting, and now I'm like, okay, yeah, I've heard this one, but anyway, it was a great day, if not for anything else other than the bookends for me, and I wanted to share that with you, so that's that. Anything else? No? Clerks conference was great.
Yes, it was.
Learned a lot.
Yes.
Well, it was a good day. The next thing, I'm going to pass these around. So while we were there, 3 of us that were there had a conversation at lunch about having a retreat for school board members. And we talked about it, and the reason to bring it up now is just so that the body can talk about it here. And so initially, this is one. Can you take this and pass down? So what you'll see on this page is if we were going to ask a VSBA person to facilitate.
I'm sorry, I got it.
Facilitate a gathering. These are the times and dates that they might be available. Okay?
Thank you.
Now, the second thing is, why would we meet anyway? Well, one of the topics we said that we thought would be good for us to discuss, since a comprehensive plan is being constructed and we are the board, it's a good time probably for us to sit back and talk about goals. together in a retreat format where, we spend half a day together. And Mr. Grove has offered up his barn, right? It's better than a barn, I know, but it's
We want to be in a barn.
facility.
We'll be in a dining hall.
Just to kind of get off campus and sit together and go through things. So the timing is, I know these dates are January, and these are not my dates, these are VSBA dates. Do we need a facilitator? Do we want to look at a different facilitator? Do we as a group want to do this? Do we believe that looking at goals is the agenda? I want to have this, I want this group to kind of talk, and the timing. We believe January is a good time because we need to get ahead of the comprehensive plan and budget cycle as a group before we're sitting in a forum like this where it's very difficult to have a conversation. Okay. So what I'm going to say is this. Take a look at these dates. These dates only mean that we are going to pay for a facilitator to come and help us.
You think we need that?
If we do not want a facilitator, or we want to find one on our own, these dates do not restrict us at all. But I would need the board to communicate with me about dates that might work out for you in January. That's kind of what I'm targeting. Something in January based upon your schedules. So if you could send me available half-day periods in January in an email, and I'll try to correlate them, and then we'll go from there. That'll tell us, and also your opinion about a facilitator. Okay?
Has anybody here experienced the VSBA facilitators, what they do, or like people who've been on the board
Yeah.
for
I mean,
longer?
they're great, but, they're going to...
Be great, and they could be.
I can tell you right now
Yeah.
that 28, 29 won't work for me.
Yeah, so take a look at the dates, send me an email, tell me what works and doesn't, okay? And then my goal would be when we get back here in January, we're going to narrow things down, set an agenda, and determine how we're going to execute this idea. Because right now it's just an idea. Okay? Any questions?
Do you want us to also communicate if we feel that we should find a facilitator ourselves?
So, you had mentioned that we should possibly look at other people that you are aware of, that I'm not aware of, that could facilitate this for us.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a more local person. And
Dr. Johnston would be a good example of somebody I would think would be a good facilitator.
Is he still around?
No, he's retired.
I know he retired. I don't know where
He's still in Shenandoah.
Okay.
So if you have ideas, we'll reach out to those people after we determine a date and see if they're available. Also tell me, do you want to, and you're right, we've had great VSBA sessions and we've had not so
It bothers me to have to spend $1,150.
Oh, this is going to be, this is $1,000.
Yeah, no, I don't think we
Yeah.
need to do that.
No. So consider, based
There are
on
other
the
groups-
conversation we're going to have, what kind of facilitator we think we're going to need, right?
Yeah, there are other groups in the county that have had facilitators within the county. There are lots of very smart
Right.
facilitating.
And all I would
people.
say is, keep in mind, if goals is our conversation, there's probably somebody that's gifted in helping us with that specific. Yeah. All right. So consider that, let me know what you think, and we'll try to put something together.
Now, one more question, I'm sorry.
Yep.
But it's not just these dates for the Charlottesville, but it's all of these dates we have to let you know if we're available for.
Here's what I would do. I would say, you can look at these dates.
110, yes,
Send me what your availability is
for all of these dates.
for any date in January where you could be free for a half a day.
Okay, good, all right.
How about that? And if it lines up with this, it's an option. If it
Do one of your-
doesn't, then we know it's
Do one
not
of
an
your
option.
little surveys.
This is tied strictly to VSBA's ability to moderate, okay? So if that's not our intention as a group, then it doesn't matter what these dates are. And if you have ideas about agenda, make sure you send that as well. Yep. All right. Anything else there before we move on? Anybody? We're good? All right, moving on to public comment. If you notice, we don't have any action items tonight. Merry Christmas. So we'll move on to public comment right now. If you would like to address the board.
Gary H.L. Hampton. I really would rather not have to address the board tonight, but I'm beginning to be concerned. There's several sort of unrelated data points out there that are beginning to pile up. I'm noticing that there's a great deal of agitation in the county because of the new assessments. And the Board of Supervisors is going to have some real issues about what they do with rates and what they do with appeals. I mean, we haven't done it for 6 years, so this is the first cycle. So that's churning a lot of people's attention around real estate taxes. There's some people who have already dug in and said 50% is the absolute cap on education funds out of the county budget. That, you know, we're sort of there, 49 depending on how you do the cafeteria piece, but we're 49 and a half, 50-ish. But whether that's tied at all to this sort of heightened appreciation of what people perceive as higher taxes coming down the pike, I don't know, but it's there. I read with some concern what the superintendent mentioned. It's great for governors to promise 5% raises to every teacher in the state. Isn't that grand? We might actually move Virginia out of the basement, but it's not grand for us. You know, we struggled last time to try and do everything we could for our teachers. And you get creative, and the superintendent and Mr. Curry, you know, worked really, really hard on every dollar. And it worked out pretty well last year. But then there were a lot of funds that came in because of COVID. And that's going to get channeled out, and some others are already allocated. And then I hear tonight that the LCI went to 8. Talk about Merry Christmas. So, you know, these are not any one of them necessarily an issue. But as you start to pile them up, I'm not thinking this is going to be an easy year for the school budget. And I don't mean to be pessimistic. I'd love to see it just, you know, come together easily and sail through, but I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the tenor in the community and these facts that are beyond our control. We don't get to tell the governor what to set out there as a goal, and we certainly don't get to set our LCI. So what can we do to better position ourselves so we can be supportive of the teachers and the education and you guys? I think getting ahead of the curve, and rather than being put into a defensive posture trying to justify what's fair and necessary, would be helpful. And to the extent that I personally, or Headwaters, or anyone else who's concerned about the education of our children can help you with that, I want to say I'm prepared to help. It would be helpful, for example, if the superintendent can figure out from somebody exactly what the factors were that pushed I mean, it's a tiny slide up, but it's in the wrong direction. Some of us spent a lot of time early in this year really, really looking in detail at what we could do to maybe help the LCI in Rappahannock. It appears it's going the other direction out of our control. The code, you know, by law, it's capped at 8. So it won't get any worse, but it's as bad as it can be. And if the superintendent could figure out sort of roughly what just that small percentage change in the LCI will mean in actual dollars lost on state funding. Any data point, any fact that we can begin to share with the community in a way that helps them understand what we're really up against as a community when it comes to funding our kids' education. The sooner we can get it out, the more positively we can present that so that they're beginning to understand what the real challenges facing Rappahannock County are, the better. Because once numbers start getting out there and once people begin to get kind of dug in around certain programs or issues or whatever, it just makes moving the needle that much harder. So, Merry Christmas, it's December, it's your last meeting. This was supposed to be a really, you know, happy meeting. I'm glad that the dashboard, when I see zeros, I rejoice at that, especially after you've had so many positive activities. But as we look at January and a new administration, some people think it'd be less school friendly. I don't know, we'll wait and see what happens. But let's be proactive if we can about numbers and get out ahead of the wave, especially if this is going to be a budget cycle where there's community pressures to top down any increase in taxation, any net increase over last year. So those are just some thoughts. Didn't have them when I arrived, but as I sat here and listened to some of the reports, I began to realize the lift is going to it's not going to be easier this coming year. It'll just be tougher. So again, anything I can do personally or anything that Headwaters can do to help educate the community and gather support for your work and the work of the superintendent, let's get started on it sooner rather than later. Merry Christmas.
Anybody be next? Who would be next? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, I'm Brenda Van Ness. It's really nice to see you all. So Dr. Chris Green, it was the first time that I've actually heard something so comprehensive and really understanding what's happening here in the county. And I can really feel for the school board, the superintendent, we've been in a crisis. The one thing I don't understand when he talks about herd immunity, does that mean that, and that's what I was trying to ask him, but maybe you guys know, if we get a vaccination and or get COVID, what builds herd immunity? Because now we're learning that we have to get boosters. Are our children going to be getting boosters in order to keep up herd immunity? The whole situation is such an unknown. And as the flu is coming up, I'm concerned for the children of the county. Mine are now 25 and 26. I'm in a fortunate place to actually be able to help. I had learned today that you guys are short on substitute teachers.
No. Yes, we are.
Well, I have been out here for almost 28 years, and I could easily recruit. I can recruit, just like going to doctor's office. We actually need to wear masks in the waiting room and be thoughtful for each other. I can promise you, I can easily recruit interesting people from the community. They might be a little bit older, but masks would be essential for that crew to come in and to be protected. And I'm just hoping that while we're dealing with such an unknown, that may be the consideration that you all decide upon to try to help keep us collective and forward moving right now. Thank you, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
What was your last name?
Well, it's Van Ness, not Van Winkle, but Van Ness, VANNESS.
And
In Piedmont.
Piedmont District?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
The new recruiter. That's great. It's good to have an extra recruiter around. Is there anyone else tonight? Is there anybody on Zoom with their hand up?
I have one person on Zoom. No hand is raised. If you would like to speak or public comment, Ellen, go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, I think we're all set. Okay.
We good?
Good.
Okay. All right, thank you all. There are no action items this evening. Is there any new business? I would want you to know that we planned a meeting between superintendent and county administrator and chairman of the board of supervisors related to the, we're getting all the data back from the SIF teams and creating a strategy on how to put that together so it's a readable
I just wanted to mention sort of one positive thing that happened that Gary didn't include on the Christmas list was that we do have an infrastructure bill that we've been kind of waiting with Dr. Bolt on looking at what we might get for infrastructure, maybe around solar energy for the schools. And I'm hoping in the new year we can, just continue to follow up on that. I know that was a little bit on hold, but now we do know some on that. I know I'm hoping Robin is
Yes.
poised to give us some information and insight on that.
So we're going to be meeting Friday, and then, but our hope is the SIFT report in January, to be able to share that with the people. So it's going to be a considerable reading project when it gets handed out, because there's a lot of information there. So anyway, that's the timeline for that. Is there any other new business tonight?
I'm not sure it's new business, but I know we had talked earlier about having Dr. Bolt do some investigation about solar and so forth. Do you know where we are on that?
Yeah, her last report came to me last week from Sun Tribe, and they had looked at it, trying to remember the name of what that's called, a PCA agreement?
The power purchase agreement. Yeah.
Yep, that's what it is. So she said, right now, they are also anticipating through the infrastructure some different incentives coming out. So based on their analysis of our, it would take some build out, whether in the parking lots, shade structures or something to get, it's just cost prohibitive right now, but they don't know that that's going to be the same. But that's Sun Tribe. She has already talked to some others too. So for a more formal presentation, we were planning that for one of the work sessions to bring you all that information. So that was my last report from her last week, but she has been working on it to figure that out. But she does also anticipate through the infrastructure bill there'll be new incentives for schools and solar and electric vehicles and all sorts of other things too. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
I should have noted before this, during the conference, I did go downstairs and there were probably 10 times more solar people than there have ever been at the conference.
Yeah.
So it's a move in that direction, I'm sure.
Anything else? Our next school board meeting is January the 11th, back in the same location at 6:30. At this time, we're going to go into closed session. We're going to be in there for 20 or so minutes, it looks like, 20 to 30 potentially, and then we'll return and certify and vote on a personnel report and then adjourn. So if you want to hang around for 30 minutes, you'll see the end of the meeting. If not, we can contact you with the results of the meeting. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I move the board convene a closed session for following purpose: to discuss and consider the appointment of staff for classified positions, coaching positions, resignations of professional staff positions, dismissal of classified positions, and discussion of mid-year review for superintendent performance pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.23711A1.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Rubin. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no. So ordered. We're going to move to another room, and we wish you a good evening.